Okay, Mikkel. This one might be a little bit
Yeah, why did you give me
easier.
that question? Mikkel, why do you love your wife?
Let me count the ways.
Yeah. Okay. Without using free will as a main support, how can you argue for the omnipotence of God when dealing with the problem of evil and suffering? So, without using free will as a main support.
I feel better now.
So without appealing to free will, I'll just say that it's possible that God has good reasons for allowing this or that instance of evil in the world, even if we don't know what those reasons are. It's possible God has a good reason for allowing this or that instance of evil in the world, even if we have no clue what that good reason is. An illustration that I like to give is when I took my little boy, when he was born, he was not even 1 year old yet. I had to take him to the doctor for a whole bunch of shots. And one day they shot him up with 4 injections in, 2 in each leg simultaneously. And I was there helping them. I was holding down my little baby, and he was looking at me with these eyes going, "Why are you helping the bad people?" And he's crying, and I'm feeling terrible. Just an example of kind of how God got me thinking about this is like Jojo, my little boy, he had no clue that there was a good reason for allowing that suffering. And I don't think anybody in this world is qualified to say, I don't think God could have had a good reason for that. No matter how bad something is, I don't think we're qualified to say that there's just no way, it's impossible that God could have a good reason for that. Because in order to do that, to evaluate the evil things that happen in the world, you'd have to say, okay, here's a world where, the actual world, where this earthquake happened, okay? And as a result of that earthquake, people stopped living there, or there were new building codes that were put into place, or whatever. And then here's another world where that earthquake never happened. Okay, here's a world where 9/11 happened. Here are all the ramifications. Here's the exact same world where 9/11 didn't happen, and here's all the ramifications of that. 50 years down the line, 500 years down the line, 5,000 years down the line. And maybe then you can begin to evaluate, well, here's a world where this happened, where that didn't happen. And could there have been a good reason? And really, who's qualified to do that? So I guess when the problem of evil is brought up, we could also appeal to what's called the full scope of the evidence. In other words, we don't just say, well, how can there be a God when there's evil in the world? Because that's everybody's problem, right? The problem of evil actually is everybody's problem. It's not just a Christian problem. Atheists have to account for evil. How do we know rape and murder and things like that are actually evil and not just whims and preferences? And they also have to account for the problem of good. Where'd good come from? If there's no should, if there's no creator and there's no way things should be, then how can we say that that shouldn't be the case, right? So rather than saying, okay, there's all this evil in the world, so there's probably no God, the question isn't, how can there be a God when there's evil in the world, but how can there be a God when there's evil in the world, and we know the universe had a beginning, and we know there are objective morals and values in the world, and we know that the world is, certain facets of the world have the earmarks of design in it, and so forth. So we want to appeal to not only, yes, let's look at the problem of evil and see what the Christian worldview has to say about it, but relative to the full scope of the evidence, there's still more evidence to show that God exists, even if we have to deal with the problem of evil. And if you don't like the Christian answer to the problem of evil, you can go elsewhere and see if that sits better with you, that evil is an illusion, that nobody really suffers, and things like that. So, yeah.
I just want to point out that I love the way you started your answer on that, because very often we don't, people will come at you with questions that I call why would God questions. Why would God, allow evil? Why would God, not make my feet bigger? Something like that. But I like how you started, because you have to put these things in perspective. Sometimes I spend a good few minutes trying to remind the person that, look, I am a speck of dust on a speck of dust on a speck of dust. And the God I'm talking about is a God who can speak 1 billion galaxies into existence, So I don't think I'm going to really be able to plumb his mind and understand all of his ways. And so you put that as the context, and then you say, all right, but I can't try to speculate with you about these things. That helps just ground the whole conversation in the proper context. That God is God, and I am this creature, this infinitesimal speck of dust. And then you can attempt your answer. And it really, it puts kind of a gloss of humility on the whole thing for everybody involved in the conversation. So I liked how you started that.